Gale Volcano. Standing at 1,000 meters above sea level, it lies 20 kilometers away from Suvel. Although reportedly an active volcano, it has laid dormant for centuries past. At the foot of the natural monument stood an equally impressive castle, which was teeming with monsters. However, Ares' Titanic form was nowhere to be seen, and by no means could his huge build enter the narrow confines of the fortress. It was but an object of pride, as the throne sat empty in the center of the estate. But if Ares truly wished, entering the castle was a simple matter. Thanks to his tamer's skills, the ram was granted a temporary humanoid form. With it, summing the throne would be a walk in the park. However, Ares had no intention of taking a human form. In his crazed hunger for revenge, he was sure it would be an unsightly appearance. And he did not dare to taint the elegant form handed down by his lord and master. For the span of 2 centuries, not once had Ares walked on 2 legs. Ares, a voice called out to the ancient familiar lying beside the castle. It was the clear voice of a young boy, towards which Ares shot a sharp gaze of annoyance. The lad barely reached 5 feet, a size that Ares' 100-meter form could easily overlook. Yet, he had the nerve to grin at the ram. Ares exhaled, sighing through his nose. "What do you want?" "Oh ho! May I not speak with you when there is nothing I desire?" Except for the blue hue of the boy's skin, he looked almost human. That is, if you ignored the reversed colors of his pupils and his whites. And, oh, the fangs that peeked out from under his upper lip, which proved him completely inhuman. In reality, he was of a race of people that drove mankind to a corner, a member of demonkind. First, let me congratulate you. With this, Levia has greatly weakened. I'm sure victory will be yours on your next attack. That goes without saying. Then why have you slept for days on end without making a single move? Just a little more and Suvel will crumble. What are you waiting for? As if he was an old friend, the demon boy offered an outlet to Ares' worries. However, the dangerous glint in his eyes said otherwise. Despite his caring words, his eyes remained devoid of emotion. No, not just this time. For these past few years, you could have crushed Suvel whenever you wanted. Yet you've left them unscathed for years. Why is that? Don't tell me you're hesitating, are you? They're the ones who betrayed your master. I haven't forgotten. Ares was wavering. That was the indisputable truth. But it wasn't about killing the 7 heroes, no. If they had been average warriors, he would have slaughtered them without a second thought. But that was where the problem lied. Each hero played a pivotal role to humanity's defenses. With the collapse of every sequential nation, demonkind took one step closer to world domination. And that was something his lord would never wish upon Midgard. As someone who hoped most to rid mankind of its fear of demons, the black-winged overlord was not one to topple nations for some petty revenge. And a revenge that tainted his lord's memory would be no revenge at all. But even then, he would not forget. He refused to forget the fleeting moments he spent with his precious lord and savior. And the incredible rage he felt towards those who stole her warmth away from him. I don't need you to tell me. I will kill Migraz. I was only waiting for my wounds to heal. I see, I see. I'm glad to hear it. So I'm guessing you're raring to go. Yeah. I can barely contain myself. He had his doubts. However, as long as Migraz no, even one of those 7 heroes remained, Ares will not have avenged his master. Whether his actions led to the world's collapse was none of his concern. This was the only way he could appease the rage and grief from having his lord stolen away. Giving in to rage once more, Ares lifted his enormous frame from the ground. This time around, Levia would not survive the encounter. Never mind Migraz, who was far from the peak of his power. Well, no sense in waiting. My monsters have been ready. Of course, they're nothing like last time's fodder. I've got monsters and wyverns who've all broken level 80. Not even that sword saint will last 10 minutes against this bunch. Sounds like a bunch of small fry to me. Oh, be a bit more lenient, will you? Most all monsters are weak compared to you. The Horde's presence made little difference to a monster of Ares' caliber. Over the past 2 centuries, mankind wasn't the only one to lose their once great fighting prowess. Despite demonkind's claim to victory, by no means was their kind free from casualties. While mankind lost their heroes to war, the greatest of demon N.O.Bless perished in battle. Likewise, powerful monsters were exploited as tools of war, driving many to the brink of extinction. The odds had been just as likely to tip in mankind's favor as it was to demonkind. Both sides of the war had an even chance at victory. And that was unforgivable. If only his liege had lived to fight the war, victory would not have been a prospect. It would have been a certainty. The demon filth would have been purged from Midgard's soil, and the world born anew, free from fear of their kind. It would only be right. So who was to blame for mankind's demise? Who had beckoned to the world's ruin? Was it the G.O.DS, who abandoned humanity to its downfall? Was it his lord, who unified all of mankind? Or was it the simple murderers, who were wars.H.I plus pad as heroes, and still lived unpunished to this day? He would kill them. His only concern was the anomaly in the red overcoat. He reminded Ares of his late master, and it wrought an odd mixture of fear and hope in Ares' broken heart. Suvell will finally fall to its ruin. Surely the Demon King will rejoice. Another of the foolish 7 heroes will soon meet his maker. The Demon Boy, one of the Demon King's 7 Farii, chuckled at his impending success. At last, Mars could present the Demon King with the head of a hero. With this, the other 6 would realize how worthy he was to be the king's aide. 2 centuries had lapsed since the age of heroes, and the devious masterminds of the time had lost their lives. It was about time for new leaders of demonkind to rise to glory, and the 7 Farii were assembled under that mindset. However, they lacked actual achievements to back their positions. But this was it. With this final victory, he would earn the Demon King's trust. At first, the conquest of Suvell seemed all too ambitious. To say nothing of Megrez himself, Levy posed quite the challenge. Difficult was a generous word when it came to finding someone willing to challenge a tireless water dragon impervious to physical attacks. The addition of Levia's regenerative powers and T.I.Tanic size was of little help. However, Lady Luck stood firmly by his side. The moment Mars found Ares by Gale Volcano, he was sure Her Holiness Alovinas was watching from above. So he invested years into Noris.H.I plus NG, a desire for revenge in a wavering Ares, which was by no means an easy task. But soon, he would be rewarded for his hard work. To convince a pillar of the 12 heavenly stars to turn on his former allies. How devious! How cunning! Show me, vengeful ram. The face of despair as mankind falls to ruin. What bothers me is that red overcoat. Ares was off guard, but anyone who can send Ares flying is nothing to sneeze at. Well, Mars was sure the guy was no match for Ares. But with Levia's and Megrez's help, he was no longer so confident of the ram's victory. While he did have the army of monsters, he wasn't sure if they would help against such monsters of opponents. Well, worst case scenario, I'll just make an appearance myself. Mars crossed his arms and watched the horde march for the war front. Surely, he had the upper hand. As long as he proceeded carefully, victory was certain. He could almost see Megrez's despairing expression as his kingdom crumbled around him. Soon, he would become an object of envy to his fellow Farii. Good things truly did come to those who wait. Mars smiled at the thought, and hundreds of monsters were suddenly sent flying, wiping the smug grin right off his face. The F.U.C.K. Mars leaned out of the castle window for a better look. What? What just happened? Could Megrez have come himself? With a demon's excellent eyesight, he scanned the point of impact. And then he saw it. Approaching on foot was a figure in that dreaded crimson overcoat. It was that F.U.C. King anomaly again. How dare he stand in his way? No, he needed to calm down. This was a chance, yes, a chance. If he took care of that red B.I.T.C.H now, Megrez and Levia would have to hold the front alone. If worse came to worst, Mars, Ares, and a couple higher-ranked monsters could conquer Suvell themselves. It didn't matter how many sacrifices he had to make. He would take this F.U.C.Ker down. Don't falter. There's only one enemy. Mars barked words of encouragement, spurring his army into action. Monsters surged forward to face a single enemy. No matter how strong a foe, he was, in the end, mortal. No amount of strength could overcome the might of overwhelming numbers. Or so he thought, as hundreds of swords tore his army to shreds. Scores of monsters fell victim to the blades, yet not a single one came close to the Crimson Warrior. Even as the corpses reached the hundreds, his horde inched no closer to their foe. Yet, the furious onslaught showed no signs of slowing. It wasn't until the army recoiled did the warrior pause to admire his handiwork. More than 500 corpses laid at his feet, a tribute to strength that Serpa.S. said the might of numbers. Who the F.U.C.K. Absurd. This was absurd. It was as if the heroes of legend had returned. Perhaps, was he another of the 7 heroes? No, the Heavenly King was renowned for his hatred of Mana, and the vampire princess was not one to help others. He was not a hero of the rebellion, yet the Red Warrior was a force to be reckoned with. Seeing his attacks as both a waste of effort and soldiers, Mars ordered his army to withdraw. He would dance with the warrior himself. A demon king, huh? It is as you say. And you are? To think that warriors of your caliber still existed. Mars said, as he unsheathed a pair of daggers. On his right, he held a blade of fire. On his left, he gripped a blade of ice. Ice to seal his enemies' movements and fire to burn them to a charred corpse. Such a sudden change in temperature rendered all things brittle to the touch, fit for Mars to crush under his heel like an aluminum can. You've done well to come so far, but your winning streak has come to an end. You see, those who oppose the Demon King don't live long. You only have yourself to blame for meeting such an unfortunate end. Mars lunged forward. Using his body's light build, the demon reached speeds difficult for the eye to follow. Each pivot left yet another afterimage as he froze his enemy, restricting their movements. This was the source of his pride, a technique not a single victim had survived. It was his ultimate, sure kill attack. Behold! The secret technique of one of the 7 Farii. The Fire Ice Double Play. As I rob you of your mobility than your life, it is the last, greatest thing you'll witness. Raging H.E.L. Fires shall send you to your death. But do not fret. The pain will only last an instant, and that is the last mercy I grant you. Rather, you should be grateful. Grateful for the salvation I grant you. Life is but a struggle for shut up. The next moment, Mars was knocked into the air, his mind unable to register what had transpired. He understood but one thing, the unfathomable power that sent him flying. No way. Something ruptured inside him, and blood gushed from his mouth. What just happened? Even the 7 heroes could not thrash him so. Mars' eyes widened in realization. Of the 500 monsters he had thrown at the warrior, not a single one was dead. While unconscious, none suffered from fatal wounds. That meant the Crimson Warrior had the leeway to hold back against these overwhelming numbers. Not only were the trans.M.U.TED blades dulled, he made sure to miss every vital point. Who, the F.U.C.K, are you? As if to answer his inquiry, jet black wings entered his fading field of vision. Mars could only stare in awe as they unfurled to their full span, revealing ruby eyes and locks of golden hair. She was too beautiful a bringer of death and too lovely a ruthless overlord. She was without a doubt. Are you? Rupaz. Rupaz Moffel. Standing before him was the black-winged overlord even the Demon King so reluctantly feared. And Mars knew that he had challenged the impossible. TL Introduction, H.E.L. Low fellow readers, TP here. I read A Wild Last Boss appeared sometime last year and had really enjoyed the series as a whole. I particularly liked the part where it was succinct with 190 chapters and epilogue yet still managed to tell a story that was wild enough yet still kept plot holes to a minimum. Since I have some free time during the New Year's break, I thought I would like to share the wild experience with others. Disclaimer, I'm just another fan trying to translate a series that I enjoyed. I don't have any experience in translating anything, nor am I great at either English or J.A. Pains. I've only studied little bit of J.A. Pains in the past. If anything, I plan to use this translation project to try and improve my English itself. I don't plan to use machine translation, but will probably be using a fair chunk of dictionary here and there when I don't know what particular words or phrases mean. So if there are puns, jokes, or slangs by the author, I'm afraid I probably will not be able to bring out the effect that the author intended. I will try and stick with the literal translation as much as possible, only changing a little if the literal translation will not make sense. If there is anything I don't understand, I will try my best to try and figure it out, or leave a J.A. Pains text after the translated version of what I took it to mean. If there is an error in the translation, website, or even in my sentence structures themselves, or anything else for that matter, please let me know in the comments below or DM me on Discord and I will try my best to fix them. Extra, I currently don't have a release schedule, but if I ever come up with one, I'll let you know. Many readers continuing from Shurum's high-quality translation might be disappointed in my version, but I hope you will give me support. IA.S.sum. By now you guys skipped this stupidly long introduction, so let's get into the translation. I took the clasps off my overcoat and spread my wings. I felt the sense of freedom instantaneously. I don't think I can ever come to like the feeling of restraining myself with my own wings. Well, no, I suppose anyone that would like it would be a weirdo. Now then, something was making a lot of noise and mucking around me, so I ended up punching the punk. But is this the guy in the background controlling Ares that Megrez was talking about? Honestly, he wasn't really strong, so I can't be sure, but I guess even a small fry can instigate a conflict. He named himself as one of the 7 planetary, didn't he? TL, author used 7 literally meaning 7 days of the week, e.g. Monday, Tuesday, etc., and each day of the week has a corresponding planet, well except the moon. Just as a reference, manga used luminaries and Shurum used ferii. I honestly don't know what ferii means and thought planetary better fit the context because of the names of the characters within that group. Please let me know which you guys prefer. 7 planetary, huh? I don't think I've ever heard of that before. I'll explain. While I was wondering out loud, Dina teleported in as if she was just waiting for the cue. You know, what's it? I really appreciate that, but isn't explaining things becoming your hobby lately? 7 planetary is a T.I.tle given by the Demon King to 7 individuals who are at general tier. This system arose 80 years ago. Currently, excluding the Demon King and his son, calling them the most powerful of the Demon King wouldn't be an overstatement. With just this? From what it looks like, they're only around level 300. It just means the quality of Demon King is also dropping. Sure, humankind lost against the Demon King, but Demon King also wasn't unscathed. They also lost most of the capable individuals. Otherwise, the world would already be destroyed, you know. That makes sense. One of my doubt was dispelled. I was previously thinking, how is the balance being maintained, but if I think about it properly, my stance of Demon King's combat ability remaining as it previously was itself is wrong. Summing all that high-level players, as well as average-level players, existed in this world, and there was a battle that could wipe them all out, I suppose it's not all that strange that the other side also suffered significantly. Would it be that? Perhaps currently in this world, only the Demon King-san can fight with me? By the way, Rappa-sama, aren't you going to finish them off? It seems like you didn't even kill a single monster. Regarding that, it's not in my taste to kill off the monsters who were only being used for no reason. My enemy is, after all, only the Demon Kins. TL, word for my here is so it's slightly different from normal my. I can't think of an English equivalent for this word, but if you imagine a royalty and the way they address themselves, it'll be something similar to that. As I say that, I slightly moved my finger. When I did, countless swords which were lying on the floor after I previously scattered the monsters all disappeared at once. Disa.s.assembly that really doesn't help, I guess. TL, I'm not sure about this line, it doesn't seem to make sense in the context. If anyone knows what it means, please LMK. What are you going to do with the monsters? Now that they've lost their master, you can return them to the wild, but there's no guarantee they won't attack people. I've thought about that as well. Capture. I activated the basic yet unique skill of the Monster Tamer CLA.S.S, Capture. The effect of the skill is to add with some chance any monster under the HP below a certain threshold or otherwise knocked out under my control. TLN, both this part and the T.I.TLE is a reference to Pokemon. The number of monsters I can capture at once and the chance of success are based on the level of the CLA.S.S, and at my level, I can capture about 10 at once. With this number, I will have to repeat it over 50 times, but there was something else I wanted to test out. It was a loophole that was definitely impossible in the game, yet at the same time, it was something that the NPC, non-playable character/enemy characters, were doing as if it was common sense. TLN, NPC are pretty much gaming term for characters in the game controlled by the AI or the game itself, or in another word, not controlled by another player in real life. This guy called Mars should also have been controlling the monsters using the Monster Tamer skill just like me. Such being the case, if he can do it, there's no reason I can't. This isn't a game, so the concept such as it's game breaking so only the NPC can use it shouldn't exist. In another word, I can think of the monsters not as individual monsters but as a single H.O.A.rd. H.O.A.rd of monster level, species, HP, SP, STR, strength/attack power dex, dexterity VIT, vitality int, intelligence AGI, agility/speed MND, mind power luck. It was possible, but what the H.E.L.L is this? All the displays seem like it's bugged. I wonder if the numbers are just not showing because the stats are different for each individual monster. With this, I really can't figure out the precise strength of the H.O.A.rd. But capture succeeded normally and I felt all the defeated monsters being added under my control. All I have to do now is to order all these monsters to not randomly attack people and send them back to where they came from. As a side note, I don't plan to take them around with me. If I walk around with this many monsters, it's too eye-catching. Well then, all that's remaining is you, Ares. I moved my line of sight a little, to Ares, who was staring at my direction. What I saw was an expression of shock and disbelief. It was the face which portrayed I can't believe what I'm seeing. Well, it's not like I couldn't understand why. Someone that was supposed to have been dead for 200 years just waltzed in. I would have wanted to say, after all, that you still had the guts to show up. But I acted as if I didn't notice, and went towards Ares. What happened, Ares? Can you not believe what are you seeing with your own eyes? Or you are doubting it to be someone with cunning resemblance? You. Now then, I wonder how Ares would react. If he would quiet down with just this, it's fine. If he says something like you're fake, it would be a bit troublesome. Honestly, I'm not too good at persuading others by talking to them. Even if my status as intelligence, is high, it, in fact, represents my memory and ability to remember, learn, and such. It does not represent my wit or ability to argue. In another word, I may have what seems like an intelligence similar to having a photographic memory, such that if I experience something once I will never forget, but it doesn't mean I became wittier than before. No way, duh. Rupa-sama should be dead. Suddenly now, to delude. TLN, imagine a robot speaking just the keywords, or inputting only the keywords into a search engine. I'm not trying to fool you. Well, there's a small question as to whether I'm really a pure and real Rupas herself though. But this body is without a doubt Rupas herself, and her will remains within it. So I must be Rupa's Mafal. I have no conviction, but I feel something that suggests it so. So I'll say this. I am without a doubt Rupa's Mafal herself. I'm not someone that's look-alike nor shapes.h.I plus fting. This is neither a hallucination, apparition, nor a dream. If you still can't believe after all that, how about it, do you want to find out using your body? As I say that, I cracked my joints. The clearest proof of Rupa's being Rupa's. That is, she is strong. Her look, her wings, and her speech pattern, everything can be learned and mimicked. But her strength alone is something that cannot be copied, something that cannot be mimicked. I curled my finger, as I provoked. Aries. Come Aries. I shall test whether you have grown or not over the past 200 years myself. And you shall learn to believe that I am in fact without a doubt, me myself. Woo! Aries made a roar that was filled with intent, as if a spirited and motivated war cry. TLN, like a roar scene from The Lion King, with just the roar, the air shakes, and feeling of the skin tingling with pressure is conveyed. I am by no means a battle junkie. In truth, I've never even had a fight with anyone properly. But the elation is there. Right now, I am definitely feeling the high, the happiness. For the first time since coming to this world, I have the feeling I can have a fight. Whoa! Aries utilizing the weight of his body charges at me. It's a scene where I normally should be shaking in fear. Yet, I felt myself smile. It's as if a lost puppy had finally found its owner and was jumping into its embrace. I felt that sense from Aries. As such, there was only one action that I could take. Even after 200 years you still have the habit to want to be spoiled. That's fine too, I shall give you the hug that you want. I flew up and stuck out one of my arms, stopping Aries's charge. The charge had a fair force behind it. There was a loud sound as if an explosion had happened, and my body was carried backwards. Not even I can stay where I was without my feet on the ground, but midair is the true battleground of an angel clan. I spread and wings and moved forward. With just this, not only was Aries stopped, but I was also able to push back and put both my hands on his head. A cute thing, it was a strange feeling. I could not see this monstrous sheep bigger than 100m as anything other than a puppy trying to act cute for attention. Or would it be closer to still loving it after it had grown large? Either way, it seems like I could not come to dislike him. Having said that, there's still the size issue. It couldn't be helped that this skin S.H.I+P felt a little stuffy. And there. I put some strength in my arms and lifted Aries up. I lifted him up above my head as if he was a pet and lightly threw him. A giant sheep was dancing in the air. He then slammed into the ground, making a crater which greatly shook the surroundings. This is not the end. You're not finished with just this. Isn't that right, Aries? Next move, Aries. You don't have to hold back, come at me without reservation. I as provoke him. Aries gestured back with a roar. The hairs on his body stood up, changing his body into a rainbow-colored flames. This is his ultimate skill, Mesaltim, which he used to torture Levia. It's easy to block it. But, I guess I'll take it head-on. B-A-A-E-E-E-H. TLN, air. Sorry, I think this is supposed to be an onomatopoeia for the sound sheep makes, but the raw made look like a goat's, so, idk. Using his burning body as an embodiment of flame, Aries charges at me. This time, I use both hands from the very beginning to stop him. Suddenly, the palm of my hands felt the warmth. It was as if the heat of the midsummer suddenly attacked me. I see now. Even if I take this embodiment of flame head on, I merely feel it as a warmth of summer heat. Even I feel like I, myself, is a cheap cheat. Having said that, what's hot is hot. There's barely any damage, but if this lasts for a long time, perhaps I might end up having something like a heat stroke. I guess I should just release it. Take this. Again, I threw Aries and slam him into the ground. Now that it's done, it's my turn. Aries was still donning the flame throughout his body, but for me, this is no different from the summer heat. And it's not hot to the degree where I can't move my body. If anything, it's the warmth just perfect for some workout. In another word, there's almost no problem at all. I guess. I'll give him a pat. Once in a while I flew above his head and I gave his enormous head a pat. With this, Aries's head slammed into the ground and bounced back with excessive vigor. Next, as if to stroke him, I tapped his chin, flinging him up into the air. Following that, I grabbed Aries and spun him around me, then stroking his belly. Well, by stroke I meant using just enough force to shatter the ground behind his back. So, what do you think? Can you still not believe that it's me? Aries. You. As I say that to Aries, as his body rose up, he started making a low rumbling sound. Maybe there's a need to give him some more love and care? As I was thinking that, I was given a surprise attack. Ares suddenly became small and human-shaped and jumped into my chest. Sob, I'm sorry Rupasay. Ares suddenly started hugging me, who was frozen in confusion, and started sobbing like a baby. From my estimate, the height was probably around 155 to 160 centimeters, the long hair going all the way to his waist, and its color. What the H.E.L.L is this? Looking from a different angle gives me a different color. Is this even real? Its limbs were thin and its main body was wearing a white robe. No, it's more accurate to say, it seemed like the moment he became human-shaped he seemed naked, but Dina instantaneously appeared behind him and seemed to put on a white robe in an instant. Now that I looked at Dina, she was making what looks to be a very satisfied face whilst giving a thumbs up. Aren't you actually faster than 12 heavenly stars? Anyways, this is. I seem to recall Tamer Cla.S.S had the skill to be able to give human form to the monsters. And I recall giving Ares a human form. Myzal was telling me the current trend is trap or something along that line. I ended up going by the flow and ended up editing Ares's physical appearance to be that of a girl's. As a result, Ares's human form ended up becoming a trap. TLN, facepalm, it's one of my regrets from my past. DAM.NU Myzal. Or more like, didn't Ares's personality change too much? The pressure you were giving up until a moment ago suddenly disappeared. Or is it that this is your actual personality, and the previous you were the one that was off? Anyways, I'll unattach him from me and... Ugh, what the? There's snot all over me? Hey, stop crying. Even after 200 years you're still a crybaby. Bulletin, but, cry, sob. I get it so. I'm sorry I made you worried. In the end, after all this, I ended up having to calm down a crying child and had to wait over 20 minutes before Ares stopped crying. As a side note, after the first 5 minutes, Dina got bored and ended up disappearing to somewhere else. And you still call yourself an advisor? __extra, by the author, TLN, author adds something extra at the end of every chapter, think of it as a skit, TLN2, after flicking through them/reading them. Honestly, I don't think if I'm going to be translating these because these are mostly jokes or skits and I can't understand them, let alone translate them. If I ever have free time I might attempt them, but otherwise, I'm sorry but I can't translate what I can't understand. Angry face. With the clasp of the cloak removed, the wings spread. A sense of release surged through my whole body. It felt terrible to have one's own wings binding oneself. Or rather, anyone who enjoyed it must be truly disgusting. Well, while I was saying this, I was sending everyone around me flying. This was the guy who Migres said was manipulating Ares, right? He was one of the 7 luminaries or something. 7 luminaries. I never heard of them. Let me explain. Dina teleported next to me the moment I finished my sentence. Well, it would be really helpful, but has exposition become your hobby recently? The 7 luminaries are the generals among demons. The group was formed 80 years ago. Beside the Demon King and his son, they could be considered to be the most powerful demons today. Are they only this strong? He seems to be only around level 300 or so. This is because of the drop in power across the demon race. Although humans lost the war against the demons were severely weakened as well. Most of the powerful demons died in the war. Otherwise, the world would have been destroyed long ago. I see. I finally understand. I had been wondering how humans maintained the power balance against the demons. Now that I thought about it, the A.S. assumption that demons were as powerful as before was wrong to begin with. There were high-level and mid-level players in this world as well. After that devastating war, it would be weird if the other side remained unhurt. Am I the only one left in this world that could oppose the Demon King? By the way, Lady Rupas, aren't you going for the finest.H.I plus NG blow? It looks like you didn't even kill a single monster. Oh. About that, I don't have the interest to kill monsters that were being manipulated. My enemy is still the demon race, I said as I shook my finger lightly. Then, the swords that scattered the monsters all over the place suddenly vanished. This was the decomposition of alchemical creations. What should we do with these monsters? After losing their master, they should return to the wilds, but then they may start attacking people. I have a solution. Capture. I activated the Monster Tamer's basic skill, Capture. There was a certain amount of chance that the Monster Tamer could capture monsters which were unable to move or whose hit points were below a certain amount. The amount one could capture and the success rate increased along with skill level. I could capture 10 monsters in one go. At this rate, I would need to repeat 50 times, but it was worth a try. This was impossible in the game, but the enemy accomplished it as a matter of fact. That Mars guy should be controlling the monsters with Monster Tamer skills like me. If he could do it, then I should be able to do the same. Since this was not a game, there would be no excuses like it would break game balance, so only enemies could use it. In other words, these monsters were not considered as individuals, but rather as a group. Mixed Monster Army level, race, HP SPSTR, strength, dex, dexterity, VIT, vitality, int, intelligence, AGI, agility, MND, mind, luck. Well, it was successful, but what was this? Was the display bugged? Was it because the individual statuses were different, so it could not be displayed? It was impossible to tell how strong they were. However, the capture was successful, and I had a sense of control over these monsters. Therefore, I merely had to command them to return to their original locations and not attack people. I had no intention of bringing them along, as they would attract too much attention. Then, you are the only one left, Ares. I narrowed my eyes, and turned to Ares, who was staring at me. He had a shocked expression, as if he could not believe what he had seen. Well, I could understand his feelings. Someone who died 200 years ago appeared alive out of nowhere. There would be an urge to say, you still have the cheek to come back. But I just pretended that I didn't care and came close to Ares. Well, Ares. Can you not believe what you are seeing? Or do you suspect I'm merely someone who looks similar? Are you, Foz? Then, what would Ares do? It would be nice if he acted maturely. If he shouted imposter, it would be rather troublesome. To be honest, I was not good at convincing others with words. Even if my intelligence status value was high, that merely represented mnemonic ability and awareness, it did not represent imagination or tactfulness. In other words, although I had photographic memory, it did not make me quick-wit. This can't be right. Lady Ruppes should be dead. This is an illusion. It's not an illusion. Well, personally I had some doubts about whether I was really Ruppes herself. But this body was truly Ruppes, and part of her consciousness remained within. Therefore, I was Ruppes Moffel. I had no evidence, but something made me feel this way, so I could make this declaration. I am indeed Ruppes Moffel. I'm neither someone who merely looks similar nor a doppelganger, neither an illusion nor a spiritual being. If you still can't believe it, why not confirm it with your own body? I said as I cracked my knuckles. The best evidence to prove Ruppes ident.I.T was her strength. Facial features, wings, and mannerisms could all be mimicked, but strength alone could not be imitated. I beckoned Ares with my finger, inviting him over. Come at me, Ares. Show me your growth in the past 200 years. Meanwhile, you could also confirm if I'm truly Ruppes. Ah! Ares got fired up and gave a cry as if of delight. The air vibrated with his cry, sending goosebumps on one's skin as a witness to his power. I was not a battle maniac. I never seriously quarreled or raged at another person, and never would. But what was this antic.I.P.ation? Currently, I was definitely antic.I.P.ating this battle. Since I arrived in this world, this was the first time I truly craved a fight. Ares lunged suddenly, taking advantage of his weight. Normally, this would be a scary sight, yet I merely smiled. This was like a lost puppy jumping into the embrace of its master. I felt a sense of something like this from Aries. Then, there was only one action to take. You still have not changed your habit of being spoiled after 200 years. In that case, let me give you a hug. I flew into the sky and reached one hand forward. At the same time, I took on Aries' head B.U.T.T, putting considerable stress on my arm. After an explosive sound rang out, my body was pushed backwards. It was impossible to stop the recoil in midair with one's feet. However, the sky was the Flugel's battlefield. I spread my wings and pushed forward, stopping Aries' attack. Furthermore, I placed both hands on his head and forcefully pushed him back. How cute! This was ridiculous to see a monstrous sheep of over 100 meters as a fawning puppy. Or was it that a cute puppy remained cute even after it grew into a big dog? Either way, it seemed I just could not dislike him. Even though his form was like this, it was inevitable when skins.h.I+p was taken to its extreme. Ha! I strengthened my arms and lifted Aries up, as if raising a pet up high and tossing it lightly. The enormous sheep danced in the air before hitting the ground, triggering the largest earthquake for today. But this was not enough. It wouldn't end merely with this. Right, Aries? Make your next move, Aries. No need to hold back, give it your all. As I provoked him, Aries made an indescribable roar. The wool on his body stood on ends. His body was transformed into rainbow-colored flames. This was what threatened Levia previously, his ultimate skill Messertham. It was easy to defend against it, well, I would take it head-on here. Meh. This time, I used both hands to suppress the charging Aries, who had become a raging flame. My palms felt a burning sensation as heat like that of a midsummer A.S. salted me. I see. Even though I directly touched this lump of fire, subjectively, it felt merely like the summer's heat. I deeply understood my own unreasonable abilities. Even so, hot things were still hot. There was almost no damage, but if this persisted, there was the possibility of suffering a heat stroke. In that case, it was better to separate quickly. Hot. I tossed Aries again towards the ground. If you are finished with all your moves, it's my turn. Aries was still shrouded in flames, but it was merely like summer heat to me. There was no feeling of lethargy as one might feel during summer. I was moving normally. In other words, there was practically no effect. Oh right. I should pet you a little. I flew to the crown of Aries' head, and proceeded with my petting. And so Aries' head kissed the ground once more, and vigorously bounced back up. I placed my hands beneath Aries' chin as if stroking it, and jumped up. Then, I flipped Aries over, and stroked his belly. Well, it was stroking, but there was enough force to crush the ground beneath Aries. Well, how is it? Can you still now believe me, Aries? I asked Aries as he got on his feet. He was groaning softly. It looks like I need to give him a little more love, huh? As I thought this, my body received an unexpected charge. Aries' body suddenly shrank and dashed into my embrace. Ah! I'm sorry, Lady Ruppaz. I was stunned by the sudden turn of events as, this person, possibly Aries, was hugging me and crying like a baby. He was shorter than me, probably around 155 to 160 centimeters tall. His long hair reached his waist, and its color. What was this? Its color changed according the degree of one's perspective. His limbs were thin, and his body was covered in a white robe. No, when he changed into humanoid form, he was naked. But at the moment of his transformation, Dina teleported behind him and covered him with the robe. Looking over, I saw Dina had a look of self-satisfaction on her face. You are faster than the 12 heavenly stars? But still, this, certainly, as I remembered, a monster tamer's familiar had the personification skill. And indeed, Aries did have a humanoid form. Mizar once said, traps are popular nowadays. As a result, I subconsciously designed his appearance to look like a girl as a prank of sorts. Because of this, Aries' humanoid form became something of a gender fraud. This was a mistake of my past. Dam.net that Mizar. By the way, did Aries' personality change? Where was the earlier sense of intimidation? Or perhaps this was his normal state, and his previous state was abnormal? In any case, I needed to peel Aries off me, ugh. His snot was all over me? Seriously. Stop crying, stop crying. It has been 200 years and you are still a crybaby. But, ugh, wah. I understand, I understand. I'm sorry I made you worried, so stop crying. In the end, I spent over 20 minutes trying to calm this child who wouldn't stop crying. By the way, Dina got bored after 5 minutes and left for parts unknown. Are you really my advisor? Author's notes translator. There is also an author's note about Mars rambling on meaninglessly, while Ruppes asked him what he was talking about. It's too long and nonsensical to translate, so whatever. Footnotes Migres, also called Delta Ursae Majoris, is a star in the constellation of Ursa Major. It is also the dimmest of the 7 stars in the Big Dipper asterism. In this novel, all the 7 heroes are named after stars in the Big Dipper, with Migres being the elf known as the Wisdom King. 7 luminaries are the celestial objects used to name the 7 days of the week in East Asian tradition, specifically Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. The 5 planets are also associated with the 5 elements. Flügel means wing in German, and is used in No Game No Life light novel series for the angel-like beings whose race is given as, literally, Skywing species. In this novel, Ruppes' race is given as, literally, Skywing tribe. Given the similarity in names, Skywing, the word Flügel will be used in this translation as well. Later in this novel, it will be revealed that some believed them to be descended from angels, so a distinction must be made between the Skywing tribe and the angels. Mesarthim, also called Gamma Arietis, is a binary star in the constellation of Aries. In this novel, the skills of the 12 heavenly stars are named after stars within their own constellations. Mizar, also called Zeta Ursae Majoris, is star in the constellation of Ursa Major and the Big Dipper asterism. In this novel, Mizar is the dwarf known as the Smith King. A wild last boss appeared. Update 1. So I was told that you couldn't comment on the post for Chapter 17 a few hours after I posted it. I'm sorry about that. Turns out I had to tick a checkbox to allow comments. I tested it out but looks like I have to tick it for every page, not blog, angry face. If anyone has a way to not have to tick it every page, please let me know. Update 2. I've changed the 7 planetary to 7 luminaries to match with the manga's translation. Update 3. MC uses a particular form of I when he's speaking as Ruppes. It's something that would be used by the emperors but are not limited to just them. MC doesn't use the I as an emperor would but more so portray the natural significance of his own character. He's really just role-playing as a great being, not an emperor. I would prefer to continue using I but if there's enough vote for we/r I may change it. Please let me know which one you all prefer. TL disclaimer. I have no experience in translating anything, nor am I great at either English or J.A. This is not machine translated but J.A. to English dictionary is occasionally used for words I am not sure about. I will not be able to fully translate the author's jokes, puns, or slangs if there are any. I will try to stick with literal translation where possible in the context. If there is anything I don't understand I will leave it in a bracket, X. If there is any error in the translation, website, sentence structure, or format please let me know in the comments below or DM me on the Discord and I will try my best to fix them. Any constructive feedback is appreciated. __Levia, I managed to protect. __. Quite a few minutes had elapsed, and Aries finally stopped crying. Although still teary and sniffing, it should at least be enough to hold a conversation by now. For now, Aries had returned from being a wild monster to a monster under my control, so I should be able to see his status. So the first thing I should do is to check his status. 12 heavenly stars Aries level, 800 species, rainbow sheep elemental affinity/type, fire HP, 75000 SP, 7600 STR, strength/attack power 4100 dex, dexterity 4000 VIT, vitality 4050 int, Intelligence 4300 AGI, Agility/Speed 4170 MND, Mind Power 4294 Luck 4180 Did his stats increase a little compared to what was in my memory? If I recall correctly, Ares's HP used to be 68,000, so it had clearly gone up. I guess in his own ways he was trying to improve himself in the last 200 years. Anyways, this is such a balanced stat. Well, it was me that raised him to be a jack of all trades due to the scarcity of stat points though. Incidentally, even with this, I doped his stat up a lot. Without doping, his base stats were in the range of 1000 to 1500. After all, this guy was originally a craft-type monster and not a battle-type monster. Blatantly speaking, the correct way to use him is to let him manufacture wool and not take him to battle. As a matter of fact, I'm the weird one for forcibly making him strong and making him fight. TLN, for non-gamers out there, combat-type pet is self-explanatory, but most games in the MMO genre have what you call life skills or crafting. Long story short, you're able to make various items for various use, e.g. potions to save expense, equipment to better your character, items to decorate your own house, etc. From the context, Ares was something that produces a rainbow wool for a maybe cosmetic item or special equipment, or something that produces in-game currency if you sell them to NPC. TLDR, just know he's not suited for battle. Now then, have you calmed down, Ares? Why, yes, looking up with a swollen red nose and teary eyes, that was a face that I couldn't relate to being male, however I looked. I'm not really into a trap, so I didn't think much at all, but Dina, who had come back G.O.D knows when, couldn't stop smiling at all. Although she disdained Orc's appearance, it seems trap was a strike for her. I feel as though I've gradually figured out her preferences. Could it be she is gallantly serving me simply because she likes my appearance? That can't be the reason, right? I don't like beating around the bush, so I'll get straight to the point. Currently, I'm on a journey to return the 12 heavenly stars to under my control, and you're my first. Don't say anything and follow me. I won't accept any objection. Yes. Gladly. Initially, I said I'll gather the 12 heavenly stars and send them to the tower, but it's quite a distance from here. Or rather, if I send this guy back alone, I'm scared he's going to get lost. He's excellent as a support, so it's probably more advantageous to take him along. Thinking along that line, I ordered him to follow me. Let's persevere together again, Rappa-sama. And, an unfamiliar person standing over there, I look forward to working with you. Dina had frozen as if she received a shock. Ah, yep. I guess you would freeze after being called an unfamiliar person. I also happened to ask Dina, who were you again, but it seems like Ares is just like me and had also forgotten about Dina. TLN, poor Dina, haha. Dina quickly came back to life and then matched her line of sight with Ares's eyes, striking up a conversation with a bright smile. Wait, no, looking carefully there were veins bulging on her forehead. Ares-sama? You really don't remember seeing me before? Really? I've always been at that tower, you know. You were there. Here, look, please try and remember. In the tower, didn't I always stay close to Rappa-sama? Told so by Dina, Ares's eyes wandered off as if he was recalling something distant. After a while, he suddenly raised his voice and said, oh. Could it be by any chance, you were that person that always blended in with the background and had no presence? So cruel. Dina was again devastated and looked at me with a face that was about to start crying anytime soon. Well, yeah, there's no helping it, Dina. Because Dina, you were in a literal sense, a background NPC. You literally couldn't interact with others, have a turn to S.H.I+NE or have the ability to do anything. If you had operated in the same way in this world, of course, no one could remember you. I'm surprised. You could move from that spot. MIA furniture. Or more like, you can speak. Rappa-sama. This child spouting savage remarks with a smile without holding back. Poor Dina. If you could have had displayed the current competence or made witty remarks 200 years ago, you wouldn't be in this situation. Or more like, why were you a background back then? Perhaps back then, you were a quiet person without much personality? If that's so, it'll mean you're also someone that changed after 200 years of time had said. I feel as though you changed too much though. TLN, I feel like 200 years is a long enough time for someone to have ma.s.civ personality change. Anyways, since this really is quite pitiful, I guess I'll step in and give a helping hand. Aries. Ever since I came back to this world, Dina is someone that had supported me wholeheartedly. Don't bully her too much. What? I'm not trying to bully her. I was just saying what I thought. That's even worse. Dina, I understand now. For good or worse, Aries is just straightforward and honest. At this rate, it looks like Dina is going to have some difficult time. Asterisk, and in that way, Aries was successfully retrieved. And while we were at it, some guy called Mars from 7 Luminaries was buzzing around and generally being annoying, so I beat him up. You may now feel at ease. What was all the hards.h.I+p we went through in the past few years? After retrieving Aries, I went back to Migres's home in the N.O.Blee district. I don't know how he persuaded the guards, but after the last encounter he told them to allow me to pas.s through if I ever showed up with a face pas.s. Well, not that I showed my face, TLN, it's a play on word in the raw, not so much a pun, but it's quite an appreciative gesture. As for Aries, since his original form and the human form is completely different, guards did not suspect and stop him to inspect at all. No one would think that monstrous sheep over 100M would be this girly-looking little boy. I was the one that edited his human appearance to be such though. What happened to all the monsters? I placed them all under my control for now. I ordered them not to pointlessly attack people, so as long as you guys don't attack them first, you don't have to worry about being attacked. That castle should have had few hundred monsters. Even after 200 years, the Supreme Ruler's charisma to conquer and command still hasn't waned at all, huh? How scary. I'm sorry about that part. It's probably had waned a lot. After all, inside is different. Not that I can say that out loud. So for now, I just laughed with a confident smile to deceive him. What do you plan to do from now on? Naturally, I'll regain control of all 12 heavenly stars under me. Next is, where again? I'm not familiar with this period's geography at all. If there were cities from the time I was playing the game I would know, but, unfortunately, ever since my nation fell apart the heroes had conquered and founded their own nations, so I have no idea where is what. And so I looked at Dina to let her continue on with the exposition. Our next location is the Royal Tomb of Black Wings. Distance is approximately 500 kilometers from this point. One of the 12 heavenly stars Libra of the scale is guarding it. From the name of it, it seems like my tomb. It's not seems like, it literally is Rupasama's tomb. Construction was completed approximate 190 years ago. Those who revered Rupasama took 10 years building an enormous pyramidal dungeon consisting of 108 floors in the greatest monumental building project of the world. The highest floor contains all the equipment, treasure, and weapons that Rupasama had previously occupied, and guarding that for the past 190 years without rest is one of the 12 heavenly stars, Libra. Libra 12 heavenly stars, Libra of the scale. Most likely the strongest golem even within Xgate Online. The base material was obtained by completing an official event, a material that is truly unique in existence, selection scale. TLN, MMO genre often have special events hosted by the game's developers or publishers, which gives a unique reward that cannot be obtained elsewhere in the game. On top of that, I paid and transferred the material to a level 200 alchemist Myzal to pull the level of the crafted item up. I've previously already stated how the max level of the crafted item is determined by the material used. For selection scale the maximum possible level was level 1000. Furthermore, with Myzal's alchemist profession level of 200, the calculation used for golem creation is such, 1000 divided by 2 plus 200, and as such golem of up to 700 could be created. Author note, golem is treated as an item so it is transferable. On top of that, I used a limited edition cash shop item orichalk.u.m. The effect of an item, to randomly increase the final maximum level of the crafted golem by 10 to 30% and was lucky enough to get a plus 30% roll, thus adding additional 210 levels. In summary, whilst being a golem, Libra boasted a level of 910, making it an existence which could be called a super golem co-created by Myzal and myself. Well, the rule of cannot be stronger than an owner still stands as usual, so if it is transferred over to a weaker player, it'll weaken proportionately, but as I'm level 1000 there's no problem. As a side note, if you look at the attack alone, it's most probably the strongest amongst 12 heavenly stars. Or perhaps more like, even stronger than me. Though to be fair, the skill of the boss character G.O.Dis of the scale was carried over and included upon obtaining the selection scale. This G.O.Dis of the scale was a gatekeeper to the almighty G.O.Dis Aldvanuz's sanctuary, or so was the backstory of the difficulty for the dungeon, and thus required the players to have a fitting strength if they wanted to challenge the dungeon. A fearful gatekeeper who struck down all weak and undeserving players without mercy, with its ultimate, unique, skill, Brachium. Skills effect, 100% hit rate, flat 99,999 area of effect damage which ignores all defense. It's given, but, if you improve your character normally, this is something that you can never withstand. Even a high-spec angel race or vampire race players usually only have around 70,000 HP at level 1000. In another word, the enemy is buffed to the point of being broken, that outside of the top players you would have had no chance whatsoever. As a side note, when we were clearing the dungeon, Migraz who had low HP got wrecked. If you could not even clear this gatekeeper, you were judged to be unqualified to meet with the G.O.Dis. This was the savagery behind the dungeon. If you could defeat the gatekeeper and manage to meet with the G.O.Dis after overcoming various difficulties the dungeon threw at you, you will be rewarded, was the premise of the event. Even after becoming a golem, this broken skill remained. As one could expect, unlike the time when it was a boss character and the broken skill could be blasted out immediately after the start of the battle as many times as it wanted, as often as it wanted, the skill was nerfed once to the point of only being able to fire once every 24 hours. But fearsome skill still remained fearsome. I clearly remember the scene where even the allies were shuddering from the skill being blasted immediately at the start of the fight as a preemptive attack to gain an advantage. The problem was, most likely due to bad AI, if it was in a condition to be able to fire the skill, it just blasted it even against the weaklings. As a consequence, there were many times I was stumped because it couldn't be used when I really needed it. Anyways, this clearly game-breaking skill was thought to be an administrative failure to properly balance by many players, and I also thought it was such. There probably would have been a balance patch in the next update and the skill would have gotten nerfed, but before that could happen, the final war had occurred and I happened to come over to this world. TLN, whenever something new comes out in an MMO, not limited to skills, most often it's broken, overpowered, and after a while, with enough feedbacks or more commonly with enough complaints by the players, it receives a balance patch where it gets weakened, aka nerf. So it's the gatekeeper. I don't know if there are any Tomb Raiders, but if there was, I can only say my condolence. In this current world, I'd imagine probably only the likes of Levia can overcome that. I've always heard rumors about Libra. I've heard it's been called a merciless murder machine that kills anyone that comes to the top floor. It looks like some had tried to persuade it by talking, but it really hasn't listened. As if troubled by it, Migraz sighed. For me personally, I think it's better off than the time with Ares, who was just acting around violently, but that doesn't seem to be the case for Migraz. Then isn't it fine to just leave it alone? Is there really a reason to want to rough up my tomb so much? It's problematic because there is. It's not just the people that deteriorated compared to the 200 years ago. Weapons, equipment, and alchemists all dropped in quality to an unbelievable degree. Especially the legendary tiered swords and armors, which were all lost during the fight with the Demon King. All that's left in the existence are those safely stored in your tomb. Legendary tier weapons are probably referring to the rare weapon drops that the players could not craft up. The likes of official event rewards are especially valuable because it is something that you never get your hands on again. Currently, pressured into the corner by the demon race, it's something that they want to get their hands on at all cost. It's not that I support raiding the tomb of the deceased, but countless weapons saved in your tomb is something that could give mankind the chance for a comeback. But, because of the existence of that golem, no one has been able to lay their hands on them. Well, you are talking about a stupidly broken skill with fixed 99,999 damage and defense penetration. Even if you say that the repeated firing is not possible, in the current age, even getting to the top floor is probably done only by risking their lives. So being fired with an instant death damage after going through all that is really something that people wouldn't be able to readily accept. Personally, I can't come to blame Libra. It's true that for mankind, it's an annoying and troublesome existence, but, for me, it's a loyal retainer that's been protecting my possession until I've returned. Let alone a reason for placing any fault on it. If anything, I should be praising it. I understand that. It's just, after you've recovered Libra, it's fine if it's even just the stuff you think you won't use. I'd really appreciate it if you left them in the tomb. I'm fully aware this is a shameless request. Well, I guess I don't mind if it's only that much. An owner of the tomb that approves people raiding their own tomb, it's quite an amusing story really. At the very least, the next destination has been decided. It's time to go give a word of appreciation to Libra, who had been working without rest for the past 190 years. End of chapter. Author's note, TLN, even though I said I probably won't translate it last chapter, I'll try to do it for chapters which are not a skit and seem to give information and is simple enough. Some irrelevant background settings, skills and CLA.S.S in this world. People are aware of normal concepts such as CLA.S.S, level, and skill that existed back in the game, but, to begin with, there's no such thing as a video game. Beyond all that, there's a creation G.O.Dis Aldvenus. All systems are created by her. There are no concepts such as to create my own skill or to craft my own technique in this world. All skills and magic are gifted by the G.O.Dis. Current, the only one with that mindset in this world, is an irregular existence, Rupas only. Fundamentally, those powers are prepared for use by mankind, and outside of mankind CLA.S.S change is not possible. That's whatever monsters do, they'll remain a monster. Alchemist orcs cannot be born with 100% certainty. It is said this mankind's power to CLA.S.S change is something rewarded by the G.O.Dis as a result of the devotion she received. However, the demon race also has the power to CLA.S.S change, and as such there are more than a few who doubts whether the power to CLA.S.S change is really a reward from the G.O.Dis due to the devotion she received. And even after 200 years of being pressured into a corner, however much people prayed, the G.O.Dis has shown no sign of changing this system, nor have there been a sign of punishment for the demon race. After a few minutes, Ares finally stopped crying. Since he was no longer crying like a baby, it should be possible to converse with him now. But before that, since Ares had once more become my familiar, I could now view his status window. I needed to check his abilities. 12 heavenly stars, Ares level, 800 race, Rainbow Sheep attribute, Fire HP 75,000 SP 7,600 STR, Strength, 4,100 Dex, Dexterity, 4,000 VIT, Vitality, 4,050 Int, Intelligence, 4,300 AGI, Agility, 4,170 MND, Mind, 4,294 Luck, 4,180 His values were higher than I remembered. His HP used to be 68,000. He had obviously grown. This guy had been working hard for the past 200 years. Even so, his values were still very average. This was due to my all-rounded training that resulted in his overall average values. By the way, these values were the result of using ability boosts. Without ability boosts, his status values would be around 1,000 to 1,500. This guy was a production-oriented monster, and not a combat-oriented one. Frankly, his true purpose was to produce wool, and not to fight. I was the weird one to forcefully make him fight. Now then, have you calmed down, Ares? Why yes. That face with the teary eyes and blus.h.I+ng nose did not look like a guy at all. I wasn't into traps, so I didn't think much of it. But Dina, who returned unobserved, was smiling brightly. She, who was disgusted by the orcs, seemed to find his appearance appealing. After seeing him, she gradually came to like it. Or perhaps, did she work diligently for me because she liked my appearance? I'm not good at elaboration, so I'll make it simple. I'm currently on a journey to recover the 12 heavenly stars, and one of them is right before me. No need to say anything, just follow me. I won't accept any objections. Yes. With pleasure. Originally, I intended to let the 12 heavenly stars return to the tower, but it was a significant distance away from here. Or rather, if I let this guy go back alone, he would definitely become a lost child. He was an excellent party member, and could make himself useful, so I decided to let him come along. Well, Ares was very happy too, so this seemed to be the correct decision. Let's work hard together, Lady Ruppaz. And, that stranger over there, please take care of me. Dina froze as if traumatized. Traumatized by being addressed as a stranger. I was the same as Ares. When I first met her, I forgot about her and asked, "Who are you?" Dina recovered quickly to meet Ares' eyes again, and smiled. No, if one looked careful, her veins had obviously popped. Lord Ares? Have we not met before? Right? I was always in that tower. At Dina's prompting, Ares seemed to have remembered something from the distant past. After a while, he exclaimed, "Oh. Are you that person who have a weak presence and constantly blends into the background? You're terrible." Dina was traumatized once more as I looked at her crying face. It couldn't be helped. That was Dina for you. Because in the game, she was really part of the background. She never made an appearance, and her abilities were never mentioned. If she wasn't so lively in this world, I wouldn't even remember her. I'm so surprised. You can actually move out of that place. Am I an ornament? You can even talk. Lady Ruppaz. This kid is unabashedly saying cruel things with a cute face. Pitiful Dina. If she had such talents and liveliness 200 years ago, she wouldn't have been treated like this. Or rather, why was she considered part of the background back then? Was she a quiet introvert in the past? A person could change in 200 years. But I felt she would have changed too much. Anyway, it was too pathetic. I should put an end to this quickly. Ares. Dina has been supporting me since my return to this world. Don't bully her too much. I wasn't bullying her. I was merely speaking my mind. That's even worse. So that was it. Ares was just innocently honest. Well, it seemed like Dina would be troubled for a while. Ares has been successfully recovered. While I was at it, Mars of the 7 luminaries has also been defeated. Be at ease. The hards.h.I+p we went through these few years. After recovering Ares, I revisited Migres's house in the N.O.Blees district. I was wondering how to get past the guards, but it seemed Migres already told them to let me pass when I visited previously. Ares simply looked too different in his humanoid form. N.O. body would A.S. associate this feminine youth with a giant sheep that was over 100 meters tall. Well, I was the one responsible for setting his appearance like this. What about the monsters? I tamed all of them. They won't attack anyone unless provoked. The monsters in that castle numbered several hundreds. The Overlord's leaders H.I+P has not weakened after 200 years. This is really scary. Oh sorry, it had probably weakened, because I was different on the inside. But it could not be said, so I frantically bluffed through this with a confident laughter. What would you do next? Of course, I will recover the 12 heavenly stars, then. Then, what? I was unfamiliar with the geography of this age. I knew of the map in the game, but after my empire was destroyed, the heroes rebuilt new nations over it. Better let Dina to continue with her explanations. The next destination is the Black-Winged Royal Tomb. It is about 500 kilometers away from here, and is guarded by one of the 12 heavenly stars, Libra of the Scales. The name seems to indicate that it's my tomb. It is in fact Lady Ruppaz's tomb. It was completed 190 years ago. Lady Rupa's admirers spent 10 years to build the world's largest monument, a Great Pyramid with 108 floors. The highest floor contained treasures, equipment, and weapons previously used by Lady Rupas. It is guarded by Libra for 190 years without resting. Oh, so it's Libra. 12 heavenly stars, Libra of the scales. She was probably the most powerful golem in Xgate Online. Her construction materials were gained by defeating an event boss. There were only 2 scales of the Chosen in the game. She was then created by Mizar, Cash Player, who was a level 200 alchemist, before transferring to me. Therefore, she was of a higher level than I could have created. I mentioned previously that the quality of the materials could increase the level cap of the creation. The scales of the Chosen allowed the level to be capped at 1000. Since her creator Mizar was a level 200 alchemist, the formula would be 1000 divided by 2 plus 200. In other words, the golem could reach up to level 700. Golems were considered items, so they could be traded. Adding the rare item Orichalk.u.m, cash item, would randomly increase the golem's level by 10 to 30%. Luckily, her level increased by plus 210. In other words, Libra was a level 910 golem. What Mizar and I created was essentially a super golem. There was still a rule that it could not exceed the master's level, so she would weaken if used by a low-level player. This was not an issue for me since I was at level 1000. By the way, Libra should the strongest among the 12 heavenly stars in terms of offensive power, sometimes even stronger than me. After all, she inherited the unique skill of the boss scales of the G.O.Dis, which we fought to gain the aforementioned scales of the Chosen. The scales of the G.O.Dis was a gatekeeper in a Lovina sanctuary, a super difficult dungeon. It was very challenging for players. This scary gatekeeper wiped out weak players without fail, using a fatal skill called Brachium. Its effect was penetration of defenses and auto-hit with fixed 99,999 damage. Naturally, this was not an attack that normal players could withstand. Flugels and vampires, with their naturally high statuses, normally had around 70,000 HP at level 1000. Thus, this terrifying attack could only be endured by players who used a lot of ability boost potions. Except for top players, everybody else would be wiped out. Even Migrez, a specialized rearguard with lower HP, would die from this attack. If one cannot pass through this stage, one would be disqualified from meeting the G.O.Dis, so it was extremely harsh. The entirety of the event involved defeating the gatekeeper and clearing the insanely difficult dungeon to meet with the G.O.Dis for reward. Yet this golem had such a ridiculous skill. When used by the boss, it could be fired repeatedly. Although the skill had been reduced to once per 24 hours, it was still a threat. I remembered it clearly. When used as a preemptive strike, this skill could wipe out the opponents and induce fear even in allies. The problem is, the computer's AI was lousy. Once the skill recharged, the AI would use it even on grunt enemies, resulting in the inability to use the skill when it was really needed. I believed this game-breaking skill was obviously the fault of administrators who failed to balance the game properly. It would probably be patched in the next update, but the final battle happened before the update and I arrived in this world. So she was the guardian. I didn't know why anyone would rob my tomb, but if she was there, it would all end in tears. In the current world, probably N.O. body besides Levia could break through. I have also heard about Libra. She would mechanically and unconditionally eliminate anyone coming to the top floor. Some tried to negotiate with her, but it seemed to have failed. Migrez said in a troubled voice and sighed. I thought that was at least better than going on a rampage like Ares, but it seemed this wasn't the case for Migrez. Then, if we just leave her alone. By the way, why are so many people trying to rob my tomb? There is a problem. Over the past 200 years, not only are our people weakened, even our weapons and equipment have degraded. Especially legendary grade magic swords and armors. These were virtually lost in the battle against the Demon King. The only ones left are those kept in your tomb. Legendary grade weapons. It seemed only greed for rare weapons could make players so persistent. Many items and weapons, especially those from events hosted by administrators, were often otherwise unobtainable and therefore very expensive. Currently, for the people pressured by the demons, these items were the stuff of dreams. The tomb has its dangers, but the weapons stored there could potentially turn the tide for our people. However, thanks to that golem, N.O. Body could acquire them. Indeed, it must be that idiotic skill with fixed 99,999 damage. Its only weakness was being limited to a single shot. However, the people today probably needed to put their lives on the line just to get to the top floor. In the crowded area, they probably all died instantly from the Ma.S.Civ damage. I can't blame her, although she really is causing trouble for people. From my perspective, she is a loyal subject who protects my legacy after I left. I have no reason to admonish her. I understand. If it is possible, we would like to have any unwanted things you could spare from the tomb, after you retrieved Libra. I know this is a shameless request. That's still acceptable. Still, it was really weird for the tomb owner to agree to a request to rob her own tomb. In any case, I decided on the next destination. It would be unreasonable to not comfort Libra, who had been working without rest for 190 years. Author's notes: skills in CLA.S.SES. People of this world accept game concepts like CLA.S.SES, levels, and skills, even though video games do not exist. The system was introduced by the G.O.Dis Alovinus. All skills and magic are gifts from the G.O.Dis, and the native people do not think of creating their own skills. Only the irregular Rupas has this concept. Basically, these powers were created for the humanoid races, and only they could change CLA.S.SES. A monster remains a monster, regardless of what it does. Orc alchemists and similar things do not appear 100% of the time. CLA.S.S change is said to be a blessing given to the humanoid races by the G.O.Dis who loves humanity. However, the demons also have a similar ability, so there are some who doubts the G.O.Dis blessing. 200 years after the defeat of the humanoids, the G.O.Dis would neither improve the system nor punish the demons, despite the wishes of many. Footnotes: Orichalk.U.M is a semi-legendary metal, possibly a copper alloy. Plato mentioned that it was second only to gold in value, and was mined in Atlantis. Brachium, also called Sigma Libri, is a binary star in the constellation of Libra. Humanoid is a collective term for various human-like creatures in fantasy settings. In the novel, there are two words which could confusingly mean the same thing, human, but are used differently. The first word is used specifically for actual humans, while the second word is used as a collective term to include demi-human races like dwarves and elves. To avoid confusion, this translation will use the word human for the first, and the word humanoid for the second. A wild last boss appeared. After a few minutes, Ares finally stopped crying. Since he was no longer crying like a baby, it should be possible to converse with him now. But before that, since Ares had once more become my familiar, I could now view his status window. I needed to check his abilities. 12 heavenly stars, Ares level, 800 race, Rainbow Sheep attribute, Fire HP 75,000 SP 7,600 STR, Strength, 4,100 Dex, Dexterity, 4,000 VIT, Vitality, 4,050 Int, Intelligence, 4,300 AGI, Agility, 4,170 MND, Mind, 4,294 Luck, 4,180 His values were higher than I remembered. His HP used to be 68,000. He had obviously grown. This guy had been working hard for the past 200 years. Even so, his values were still very average. This was due to my all-rounded training that resulted in his overall average values. By the way, these values were the result of using ability boosts. Without ability boosts, his status values would be around 1,000 to 1,500. This guy was a production-oriented monster, and not a combat-oriented one. Frankly, his true purpose was to produce wool, and not to fight. I was the weird one to forcefully make him fight. Now then, have you calmed down, Ares? Why yes. That face with the teary eyes and blus.h.I+ng nose did not look like a guy at all. I wasn't into traps, so I didn't think much of it. But Dina, who returned unobserved, was smiling brightly. She, who was disgusted by the orcs, seemed to find his appearance appealing. After seeing him, she gradually came to like it. Or perhaps, did she work diligently for me because she liked my appearance? I'm not good at elaboration, so I'll make it simple. I'm currently on a journey to recover the 12 heavenly stars, and one of them is right before me. No need to say anything, just follow me. I won't accept any objections. Yes. With pleasure. Originally, I intended to let the 12 heavenly stars return to the tower, but it was a significant distance away from here. Or rather, if I let this guy go back alone, he would definitely become a lost child. He was an excellent party member, and could make himself useful, so I decided to let him come along. Well, Ares was very happy too, so this seemed to be the correct decision. Let's work hard together, Lady Ruppaz. And, that stranger over there, please take care of me. Dina froze as if traumatized. Traumatized by being addressed as a stranger. I was the same as Ares. When I first met her, I forgot about her and asked, "Who are you?" Dina recovered quickly to meet Ares' eyes again, and smiled. No, if one looked careful, her veins had obviously popped. Lord Ares? Have we not met before? Right? I was always in that tower. At Dina's prompting, Ares seemed to have remembered something from the distant past. After a while, he exclaimed, "Oh. Are you that person who have a weak presence and constantly blends into the background? You're terrible." Dina was traumatized once more as I looked at her crying face. It couldn't be helped. That was Dina for you. Because in the game, she was really part of the background. She never made an appearance, and her abilities were never mentioned. If she wasn't so lively in this world, I wouldn't even remember her. I'm so surprised. You can actually move out of that place. Am I an ornament? You can even talk. Lady Ruppaz. This kid is unabashedly saying cruel things with a cute face. Pitiful Dina. If she had such talents and liveliness 200 years ago, she wouldn't have been treated like this. Or rather, why was she considered part of the background back then? Was she a quiet introvert in the past? A person could change in 200 years. But I felt she would have changed too much. Anyway, it was too pathetic. I should put an end to this quickly. Ares. Dina has been supporting me since my return to this world. Don't bully her too much. I wasn't bullying her. I was merely speaking my mind. That's even worse. So that was it. Ares was just innocently honest. Well, it seemed like Dina would be troubled for a while. Ares has been successfully recovered. While I was at it, Mars of the 7 luminaries has also been defeated. Be at ease. The hards.h.I+p we went through these few years. After recovering Ares, I revisited Migres's house in the N.O.Blees district. I was wondering how to get past the guards, but it seemed Migres already told them to let me pass when I visited previously. Ares simply looked too different in his humanoid form. N.O. body would A.S. associate this feminine youth with a giant sheep that was over 100 meters tall. Well, I was the one responsible for setting his appearance like this. What about the monsters? I tamed all of them. They won't attack anyone unless provoked. The monsters in that castle numbered several hundreds. The Overlord's leaders.H.I+P has not weakened after 200 years. This is really scary. Oh sorry, it had probably weakened, because I was different on the inside. But it could not be said, so I frantically bluffed through this with a confident laughter. What would you do next? Of course, I will recover the 12 heavenly stars, then. Then, what? I was unfamiliar with the geography of this age. I knew of the map in the game, but after my empire was destroyed, the heroes rebuilt new nations over it. Better let Dina to continue with her explanations. The next destination is the Black-Winged Royal Tomb. It is about 500 kilometers away from here, and is guarded by one of the 12 heavenly stars, Libra of the Scales. The name seems to indicate that it's my tomb. It is in fact Lady Rupa's tomb. It was completed 190 years ago. Lady Rupa's admirers spent 10 years to build the world's largest monument, a Great Pyramid with 108 floors. The highest floor contained treasures, equipment, and weapons previously used by Lady Rupa's. It is guarded by Libra for 190 years without resting. Oh, so it's Libra. 12 heavenly stars, Libra of the Scales. She was probably the most powerful golem in Xgate Online. Her construction materials were gained by defeating an event boss. There were only 2 scales of the Chosen in the game. She was then created by Mizar, Cash Player, who was a level 200 alchemist, before transferring to me. Therefore, she was of a higher level than I could have created. I mentioned previously that the quality of the materials could increase the level cap of the creation. The scales of the Chosen allowed the level to be capped at 1000. Since her creator Mizar was a level 200 alchemist, the formula would be 1000 divided by 2 plus 200. In other words, the golem could reach up to level 700. Golems were considered items, so they could be traded. Adding the rare item Orichalk.u.m, cash item, would randomly increase the golem's level by 10 to 30%. Luckily, her level increased by plus 210. In other words, Libra was a level 910 golem. What Mizar and I created was essentially a super golem. There was still a rule that it could not exceed the master's level, so she would weaken if used by a low-level player. This was not an issue for me since I was at level 1000. By the way, Libra should the strongest among the 12 heavenly stars in terms of offensive power, sometimes even stronger than me. After all, she inherited the unique skill of the boss scales of the G.O.Dis, which we fought to gain the aforementioned scales of the Chosen. The scales of the G.O.Dis was a gatekeeper in a Lovinus sanctuary, a super difficult dungeon. It was very challenging for players. This scary gatekeeper wiped out weak players without fail, using a fatal skill called Brachium. Its effect was penetration of defenses and auto-hit with fixed 99,999 damage. Naturally, this was not an attack that normal players could withstand. Flugels and vampires, with their naturally high statuses, normally had around 70,000 HP at level 1000. Thus, this terrifying attack could only be endured by players who used a lot of ability boost potions. Except for top players, everybody else would be wiped out. Even Migrez, a specialized rearguard with lower HP, would die from this attack. If one cannot pass through this stage, one would be disqualified from meeting the G.O.Dis, so it was extremely harsh. The entirety of the event involved defeating the gatekeeper and clearing the insanely difficult dungeon to meet with the G.O.Dis for reward. Yet this golem had such a ridiculous skill. When used by the boss, it could be fired repeatedly. Although the skill had been reduced to once per 24 hours, it was still a threat. I remembered it clearly. When used as a preemptive strike, this skill could wipe out the opponents and induce fear even in allies. The problem is, the computer's AI was lousy. Once the skill recharged, the AI would use it even on grunt enemies, resulting in the inability to use the skill when it was really needed. I believed this game-breaking skill was obviously the fault of administrators who failed to balance the game properly. It would probably be patched in the next update, but the final battle happened before the update and I arrived in this world. So she was the guardian. I didn't know why anyone would rob my tomb, but if she was there, it would all end in tears. In the current world, probably N.O. body besides Levia could break through. I have also heard about Libra. She would mechanically and unconditionally eliminate anyone coming to the top floor. Some tried to negotiate with her, but it seemed to have failed. Migrez said in a troubled voice and sighed. I thought that was at least better than going on a rampage like Ares, but it seemed this wasn't the case for Migrez. Then, if we just leave her alone. By the way, why are so many people trying to rob my tomb? There is a problem. Over the past 200 years, not only are our people weakened, even our weapons and equipment have. Degraded. Especially legendary grade magic swords and armors. These were virtually lost in the battle against the Demon King. The only ones left are those kept in your tomb. Legendary grade weapons. It seemed only greed for rare weapons could make players so persistent. Many items and weapons, especially those from events hosted by administrators, were often otherwise unattainable and therefore very expensive. Currently, for the people pressured by the demons, these items were the stuff of dreams. The tomb has its dangers, but the weapons stored there could potentially turn the tide for our people. However, thanks to that golem, N.O.Body could acquire them. Indeed, it must be that idiotic skill with fixed 99,999 damage. Its only weakness was being limited to a single shot. However, the people today probably needed to put their lives on the line just to get to the top floor. In the crowded area, they probably all died instantly from the Ma.S.Civ damage. I can't blame her, although she really is causing trouble for people. From my perspective, she is a loyal subject who protects my legacy after I left. I have no reason to admonish her. I understand. If it is possible, we would like to have any unwanted things you could spare from the tomb, after you retrieved Libra. I know this is a shameless request. That's still acceptable. Still, it was really weird for the tomb owner to agree to a request to rob her own tomb. In any case, I decided on the next destination. It would be unreasonable to not comfort Libra, who had been working without rest for 190 years. Author's notes: skills and CLA.S.SES. People of this world accept game concepts like CLA.S.SES, levels, and skills, even though video games do not exist. The system was introduced by the G.O.Dis Alovinus. All skills and magic are gifts from the G.O.Dis, and the native people do not think of creating their own skills. Only the irregular Rupas has this concept. Basically, these powers were created for the humanoid races, and only they could change CLA.S.SES. A monster remains a monster, regardless of what it does. Orc alchemists and similar things do not appear 100% of the time. CLA.S.S change is said to be a blessing given to the humanoid races by the G.O.Dis, who loves humanity. However, the demons also have a similar ability, so there are some who doubts the G.O.Dis blessing. 200 years after the defeat of the humanoids, the G.O.Dis would neither improve the system nor punish the demons, despite the wishes of many. Footnotes: Orichalk.U.M is a semi-legendary metal, possibly a copper alloy. Plato mentioned that it was second only to gold in value, and was mined in Atlantis. Brachium, also called Sigma Libri, is a binary star in the constellation of Libra. Humanoid is a collective term for various human-like creatures in fantasy settings. In the novel, there are two words which could confusingly mean the same thing, human, but are used differently. The first word is used specifically for actual humans, while the second word is used as a collective term to include demi-human races like dwarves and elves. To avoid confusion, this translation will use the word human for the first, and the word humanoid for the second. A wild last boss appeared.